Welcome to the January 9th, 2025 organizational meeting. Please call to order.
Suzanne Arthur,
Here.
Christopher Bailey,
Here.
Jesse Connor,
Here.
Scott Powers,
Present,
Megan Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
and we pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've already done the roll call. haven't we?
Yep.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move. I'll second.
Thank you.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
at this time, we'll have the election of president. I would ask for nominations and a motion for the elect board president.
I nominate Chris Bailey.
We have a second.
I'll second, yeah. I thought we called for all nominations and just voted. Yeah, I think so.
So no other,
Nominations, then we should take a vote.
so the second is Jesse.
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur.
Yes.
Mr. Bailey is now our board president.
and now would you do the administration of the oath of office?
I gave you a sheet, didn't I?
I don't need them. I just say, I just,
Yeah, you just answer,
yeah, okay, that's the same.
so you could follow.
Got it.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as the president of the Greeneview Local School District Board of Education, Greene County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuation in office and until your successor is elected and qualified? If so, answer I do.
I,
And we'll take over.
okay. All right, we'll now take nominations and a motion to elect the board of vice president. Do I have nominations?
They made Miss Jessie Connor.
Okay, do we have any other nominations?
I second nomination.
Close nominations, second. Mrs. Arthur?
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur.
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes. Yeah.
If you'd like to follow along. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as the Vice President of the Greeneview Local School District Board of Education, Greene County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in office and until your successor is elected and qualified? If so, answer I do.
I do.
Moving on to section 4. Set the dates, time and place for the regular Board of Education meetings for 2025. It is recommended that the Greeneview Local School District regularly scheduled meetings be held on the third Thursday of every month, starting at 6 p.m. unless otherwise noted in the attached calendar. All meetings will be held in the Greeneview Local Board Office, 4 South Charleston Road, Jamestown, Ohio, 45335. Do I have a motion to accept?
moved.
I'll second.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Number 5, set 2025 organizational meeting date and time. It is recommended that the Greeneview Local School District's 2026 annual tax budget and organizational meeting be set for January 8th, 2026 at 5:45 PM at the Greeneview Local Board Office, 4 South Charleston Road, Jamestown, Ohio, 45335.
I'll move.
Second.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah,
Motion passes.
Item 6, approve treasurer authorizations. A, authorize the treasurer to pay bills. B, authorize the treasurer to make advances to negative fund balances as necessary and to report these advances at the next board meeting. C, authorize the treasurer to transfer funds as necessary and to report to the board such transfers at the next regular meeting. D, authorize the treasurer to borrow up to $500,000 as necessary. E, authorize the treasurer to make investments. F, authorize the treasurer to purchase liability insurance. G, authorize the treasurer as a district signatory. H, authorize the treasurer to request advancement of tax monies. I, authorize the treasurer as public records training designee. J, appoint the treasurer to the Greene County Tax Incentive Review Council. And K, approve treasurer authorizations items A through J. I have a motion to approve.
I'll move. I'll second.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
yeah,
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 7, approve superintendent authorizations. Authorize the superintendent or designee to apply for funds, grants. B, authorize the superintendent to employ temporary personnel. C, authorize the superintendent to employ certified and classified personnel. D, authorize the superintendent to accept resignations of certified and classified personnel. E, authorize Peyton McCarty to be the district's Title IX compliance officer for the 2025 calendar year. F, authorize the superintendent to approve all staff absences and or leaves unless otherwise indicated in the negotiated agreements. G, authorize superintendent to be the board's designee for the purpose of hearing final student suspension appeals. H, authorize John Jehoda to be the board's designee for the purpose of hearing final student expulsion appeals. I, authorize superintendent as the district's purchasing agent. J, approve superintendent authorizations items A through I.
I'll move.
second,
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, Item 8, other organizational items. A, waive the reading of the minutes. B, authorize the use of the following law firms: Bricker Graydon LLP and Dinsmore and Scholl LLP. C, recommend primary news media source as Xenia Gazette. D, authorize the renewal of the following annual membership dues, including e-publications: 1, OSBA, 2, OHSAA, 3, Jamestown Area Chamber of Commerce. E, establish a board service fund. F, establish a records commission. G, approve other organizational items A through F.
move,
Second.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Section 9, board appointments. Here we need to appoint the OSBA delegate.
Who's that last? I like the legislator.
I think I am currently the OSBA
Mhm.
delegate.
Mhm.
I'm fine staying that. If-
You're okay doing that?
Sure. I mean,
Great.
Oh.
I'll move for that.
if someone else wants to.
that.
I think we just name them and then at the end,
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be that. Someone who wants to be, anyone want to be the, we need an alternate. Who's the alternate who's the, oh, you don't have it, it's okay. Because we need an OSBA alternate, and then we need sounds like Megan wants to do legislative.
I can be the alternate.
Suzanne do alternate.
I'll be the alternate. Don't get sick.
It's a lot of responsibility.
I did it for like 10 years. I don't know.
All right, and item D is approve the board member appointment items A through C. The motion to approve,
I'll move.
I'll second.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
yes.
Mrs. Connor.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Section 10, other organizational business. Does anyone have any other organizational business? Hearing none. I would entertain a motion to adjourn organizational meeting.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
yeah.
Meeting is ended at 6:12.
Keep on going.
You didn't want to read.
No, we can do that next time. Okay. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Greeneview Local School District for January 9th, 2025. Can you please call the roll
Suzanne Arthur,
Here.
Chris Bailey,
here?
Jesse Connor,
Here.
Scott Powers,
Yeah,
Megan Smith.
Here.
Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I remember us doing that.
I don't think I've ever done that twice.
We're extra patriotic
Yes, we
today.
are.
It just had to take a double take to make sure the tree was.
Yeah. All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
You so have.
I'll second.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, item E, invitation for public participation on agenda items only.
Everybody looking.
Davis, we're good, okay.
All right.
Item 2, a district update from Dr. Whitaker.
I didn't get the presentation. So as we start our second semester, I just wanted to just kind of remind the board, as well as our community about the work that's taking place in Greeneview local schools. This is a symbol that should not be unfamiliar to you, and that we continue to share with our parents and our community. Just as a reminder to kind of talk through it, we obviously have the Greeneview student at the middle of our visual there. This diagram kind of works inside out, but also outside in as you look at the outer ring that includes our community. So with the Greeneview student being in the middle, you can see that is surrounded by teaching and learning facilities and operations that you hear me speak about at the board meetings, and within kind of the wheels or the parts of the wheel there. I'm going to run through some of our goals and some of the work in the district that fits primarily within teaching and learning, but those are the day-to-day operations. And then outside of that, of course, is our school-wide culture that encompasses teaching and learning facilities and operation spokes of the wheel. That was the word I was looking for earlier. And then parents as partners, and then again, outside the larger community who is also a part of our learning community here at Greeneview Schools. So this year, although we're doing all the work all the time, it's important to us that we do prioritize our work. There are lots of plates spinning. So this year, our focus has really been on making sure that the student is the center of all of our decision-making and all of our work. We've made intentional efforts, especially with school culture. And parents as partners is always kind of working in the background and looking for ways in which we can engage our families differently in our schools so that they can participate in the activities and the learning experiences of their students. So I'll start first with operations, kind of like the superintendent's update here, just going into a little more detail. First operations, then facilities, and then I will finish up with teaching and learning. So within each of the areas, so even within operations, these are consistent headings that you have seen under my leadership here at Greeneview Schools, that there are kind of these three sub areas, if you will, ensuring that we are fiscally responsible, attending to policies and resources, as well as communications. So the priorities within the fiscally responsible realm, which lives in Mrs. Fisher's world especially, is making sure that we're monitoring compliance with our financial policies. I know that you've been working through our audits, so I imagine that's close to being finished up, but appreciate everyone's cooperation to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. I know that she's working on a student activities manual or some guidelines and policies. And this year is a negotiations year for both bargaining units. So this spring and this summer, we will be negotiating with both the GEA and the GCEA. Under policy and resources, each year we are looking at different aspects of the student handbook and even more specifically, the student code of conduct. So what is a priority this year, especially is looking at our format. So while we've been working on making sure that our language is consistent and developmentally appropriate, they also have a look to them that is very different. So I want to make sure that we're working on making sure that we have more consistent format. Also looking at discipline procedures, so not just the language in the student code of conduct, but how we are addressing behaviors and then what that record keeping looks like and the policies and systems associated with that. We have an emergency operations guidance document that we refer to as our balloon binder. This year's focus has been on reunification. And we, at the district office here, are currently working on a facility maintenance guidebook that is underway and we hope to have complete by the end of the school year. From a communication standpoint, we've really focused this year on saturating with the positive and sharing celebrations and events that have taken place in the district. There is an emphasis and will remain an emphasis on external communications. You really can't communicate enough, and making sure that we're communicating accurate and accessible, easily accessible information. More work to do this second semester will include further website development, making sure that our gifted page, our special education page, all the legal compliance pieces that are supposed to be posted are, again, in a format that is easily accessible and understandable to our parents, but also larger community. Within facilities, safety and security. So there are your three headings that continue to live within facilities. So safety and security, our classroom and learning spaces, as well as our extracurricular spaces. Under safety and security, what has been a focus this year and has been completed is the district rekey project that has been implemented and is complete. And again, as you already heard me mention, reunification is an area of focus this year for safety and security. Classroom and learning spaces, our library and digital media program is underway. So that includes digital media, technologies, makerspace activities, and really what that looks like within each of our buildings is off and running. And of course, a large focus of the beginning of the year was the information that we shared out for the November 24 ballot issue. From an extracurricular spaces point of view, the multi-purpose space, that building at the high school, in fact, the prefabricated building, the steel was delivered last week. We're waiting on panels to arrive. And actually, as we speak, they are working on making sure that they're working on the foundation, including the pillars and the anchor pivots. I don't have it in front of me. To make sure that they secure the building to the concrete. Anchor bolts are in place for the foundation, and Greene County is actively involved in the inspections. They were on site yesterday, they were on site today, and so we are moving through that process, even in the cold weather. And then lastly, improvements to the current field house. So we've done things like added fans and improved the lighting, and there are still more improvements to do in that space. So focusing on teaching and learning. So within teaching and learning, we have three separate goals that we attend to. Goal 1 is that Greeneview schools will implement high-quality instructional practices, especially in literacy, to increase students' abilities in. And this is the first year. We've always had this as a goal, and we've always had this as a focus area. And we've been working on things to support this goal, like implementing curriculum and making sure that we're talking about high-yield practices. But this is the first year where each of the buildings has put a tangible SMART goal related to specific outcomes for students. So at the elementary school, each grade level is really focusing on a specific area within their grade level. Say it could be phonics, could be phonic awareness, and actually putting a quantifiable number to that. So they want to increase that 10% based on whatever goal that they have established. At the middle school, they've identified an increase of 5% on their OSTs to read, write, and think critically across all content areas. And at the high school, looking at their data, they prioritized ELA and they want to improve 9%. So they are attainable, they are realistic, and that is looking at trend data and pattern data to establish like what is a reasonable goal for us to continue to move forward with achievement. You've heard me say before as well that within each of our goals, like we talk about really 3 areas that work in a triangle, like whether it is the system, again, things like curriculum, what the staff will need to attend to, and then what the expectations are for students, and all 3 of those pieces kind of working in tandem so that we are as effective as possible in providing the best learning experiences possible to meet our goals. Goal number 2 is focused on personalized instruction and closing learning gaps. Again, for the first time, each of the buildings has established a tangible, realistic, SMART goal for them to improve so this is growth, so different from kind of like proficiency in goal 1. Goal two is really focused more on growth. So at the elementary school, they have a goal of 50% of their students are going to meet their iReady stretch growth, which means that they won't just grow a year, but they would be able to grow more than a year to make sure that we are closing learning gaps for students who are underperforming. When looking at value-added data at the middle school and the high school, the middle school is pushing themselves in ELA to go from expected growth to above expected growth, and the high school is looking to go from below to expected in all of their areas. Again, systems, staff, students, all 3 working in tandem to achieve goal 2. Just some other teaching and learning highlights before we move on to goal 3. Again, the library and digital media program is up and running. Through Montgomery County ESC, we've been able to use consulting services to ensure that our gifted compliance and practices are up to par and up to speed. Just as an aside, we did not replace the gifted intervention specialist position this year. And I will be posting that soon to make sure that we get ahead of the game for next year. Special education just came out with some updates to their practices. So we will have to as well respond to that and update compliance with special education. There's a big focus this year within teaching and learning on implementation. We have new curriculums, we have new processes, we have new systems, which are all good things, but we really need to make sure that we're focusing on proper implementation so that those curriculums and practices are successful. We're doing more with behavior intervention and support. We have a core group, I call them a committee, if you will, that is kind of doing the legwork for others to make sure that we have resources and tools available for students who might be underperforming and it's not an academic skill deficit. And upcoming, we've done a lot of literacy work in the district, but we want to formalize a literacy plan. Not only is that good practice, but it will walk us into the ability to apply for potential state grants that could help support additional resources and to really keep our work going in literacy. And finally, we couldn't leave teaching and learning, or I'd be remiss without just kind of reminding of last year's district report card. So these are the highlights associated with the district report card. We went from a 3 to a 4 overall out of 5 stars, which is a significant improvement to go from one number to the next. We're doing well closing gaps and providing intervention to our underperforming students, but where we can pick up points is by maximizing the growth and achievement of our high performing students. Our K-3 literacy improved significantly, and that really helped in boosting our rating from a 3 to a 4, and these efforts will continue through the middle and upper grades. And from a college career and workforce readiness perspective at the high school, we improved over 20%. So we're proud of all of the opportunities that we provide our high school students to prepare them for whatever their post-secondary experience may look like. So teaching and learning goal 3, final goal 3, I'm going to take a look at this one a little differently. Greeneview local schools will implement a system of support that promotes a positive school climate to foster all students' readiness to learn. So we break this down really into 2 pieces. If we're going to promote a positive school climate to foster students' readiness to learn, thinking one about the system, but also staff and students. So breaking it down to staff and students. So from a staff perspective, I'm going to come back to that. A culture survey drove our work. And then from a student perspective, students self-report their own social emotional feedback. And from that feedback, the areas of focus at the elementary are helping students understand how their feelings can impact their behavior and how to kind of manage their own self-regulation. At the middle school, they're focusing on engagement with peers, engagement for students with other peers, and engaging in school activities. So really like being involved in school. And then at the high school, we know that our high school teachers have connections, but how do they extend those connections between staff and students to have like more of an impact and to foster, like not just teach the content, but foster other kinds of growth necessary for our high school students to be successful. So again, teaching, the goal 3 is about school climate, broken down from student and then to also staff. So now I'm going to transition here into staff, because if you remember at the top of the presentation, this was a focus for us this year. So within the staff culture survey, the data was broken down into these categories. We use Character Strong's resources to facilitate this work. So within each of the questions, they either fell into staff feeling a sense of belonging, feeling valued and appreciated, having a sense of well-being, and also having efficacy, which is really a teacher's confidence in their ability to have impact and to help students learn and succeed. So we use these 2 words sometimes interchangeably, climate and culture. But to break it down for you so that we can actually focus on some tangible action steps to be able to promote increased climate in the schools, is that climate is really how you feel, right? And that is something that you don't always have control over. Like when you come to work, like you might have had someone might be sick, or you might have an issue with a child or a pet or a fight with your spouse. And so those are things that when you come to work with, you don't always have control over, but it's still going to affect the climate because it's the feelings kind of like you're bringing into the space. But culture are those things that you can actually do. They're the things that you do have more control over. They're how you behave. Like they're the actions and the traditions and the way in which you navigate the space. So those are some things that we know that we can focus on that can help make sure that we're promoting the climate. So if you bear with me for a moment, this is pretty short. I think it's about 3 minutes, and it really speaks to this topic a little bit more.
Down in the middle of the diagram, we see respect and value. That is the core of everything as it relates to your climate and culture. What is it that you respect and value? Now, we may say that we respect and value certain things, but you may act out differently. To identify what respect and value, that's the most important thing. Now, the next part of this is, you see the diagram? This is a message for me. That blue line is climate. Now, what is climate? Climate is the emotional feeling that you have when you enter a space. Now, I've been in a lot of schools all over the country, and I've been in some schools. You walk in the door and you can feel it right away. You don't have to meet a person at all. You walk in like, oh, this doesn't feel good at all. Ooh, what's going on around here? Anybody ever walked into a building like that? Oh my goodness, yes. And then you walk into some other buildings, you walk in, you're like, oh my goodness, this place is Disney. Oh, it feels so good here. The climate, the feeling, it's you can see in there in the diagram, it moves up and down because it fluctuates. That's what climate is, and that's why it fluctuates. Sometimes it's close to what you expect in value, and sometimes it's not. Let's talk about culture. Culture is represented by the two gray lines. And for me, culture is nothing more than a fancy word for traditions. What do you traditionally do? How do you traditionally operate and behave in a building? And that's why it's represented by those two gray lines, because there's two different types of culture. There is operational culture, and then there's your behavioral culture. Now let's talk about the operational culture. Operational culture is how you operate. How do you traditionally operate? How do kids come in the building? How do kids move through the hallway? How do teachers get scheduled? How do students get scheduled? How do we have an assembly? How do we do lunch? Then the top gray line is your behavioral culture. How do people traditionally behave? Better yet, what is tolerated? How do students talk to students? How do teachers talk to students? How do students talk to teachers? How do administrators talk to students? How do administrators talk to teachers? So now we have all of our pieces in this diagram. A lot of times what we try to do is we try to improve the climate in a building. We want the environment to feel better. But I'm letting you know, you can't just sit there and say, we're going to improve the climate. What you can do is you can improve the culture. When you take your culture, your operational culture and your behavioral culture, and align it with what you respect and value, those two lines move closer. And when those two lines, your behavioral culture and your operational culture, move closer to what you respect and value, what happens to the climate? It levels out.
Just thought that was a good job of explaining really the difference between climate and culture. When you say you want a positive climate, what kind of things can you actually tangibly work on, which is the culture? And so we know that connection doesn't happen by accident. And just like we need to plan for our content, I spoke all about setting goals and all of the things that we're doing with teaching and learning for achievement and growth, but we also have to plan for and make space for our connections. And just to use another kind of little mini example here, you know, if you decide you want to be more physically fit or you want to be healthy, you really have to start with a plan, but you just can't say you're going to do a plan. You need to do reminders for yourself. You need an accountability partner. You need to map out your classes or lay out your clothes the night before, get your running shoes, set them by the bed, download the app, and then you actually have to do the things and change the behaviors so that you get the outcome that you want. And so to kind of follow that format, then, if you come back to the survey and the way in which Character Strong organized the topics. So what can we do also that's not one more thing on the plate? You know, honestly, I would say like this is the plate. Your school-wide culture is the plate. But what are some very kind of like easy, low burden, high impact things that you can do to positively have impact on your culture, which in turn will have a positive impact on the climate, and to be real intentional about that. So at each of the buildings, we've broken it down into well-being, belonging, and engagement. And these are just some easy examples of how you can set goals and come up with action steps that are low burden, but high impact, like expressing gratitude, having conversations about what's within our control, making sure that we're kind to one another, we're neutralizing routines, we're doing getting to know you activities, especially with new staff, we're having opportunities for connection, and really the list goes on. To feel belonging, then we need to do things that are going to develop relationships. We need to make sure that we have tangible things in place that acknowledges and appreciates the staff in our buildings, and all staff are certified, are classified, and are exempt. So, and then engagement, like I said, if staff want to feel engaged, then they need to have voice and input. They also need to have quality professional learning to support them in their daily routines. And Character Strong talks about like this law of the lid, which is essentially like, if you're the leader, you know, like that, like no one's energy is going to, extend yours. So you have to come into the room with the energy and the positivity and such that those, whether you're the superintendent or whether you're a principal or a classroom teacher, or you're leading a club, that like your energy really sets the tone. And so just kind of bring us back to where we started here with the student in the center. I've gone through the teaching and learning pieces as well as facilities and operations. And again, the spokes of the wheel here kind of embedded in the things that I've shared. We spoke about school-wide culture. And so just to kind of finish things up, here are some examples of the ways in which we engage parents in our district. Like I said, it's always in the background and we're always looking for creative ways to engage parents, and not just for all the fun stuff, but the ways in which to engage them in learning experiences. Our PTO at our elementary school and at our middle school is really functioning at a high level, in my opinion. And they are coming up with all kinds of ways in which, whether it's a door decorating contest or bringing teachers a treat or doing activities, like there are just multiple ways in which our parents are connecting with teachers inside the building. We're having academic nights at the elementary school, things like Grinch pancakes, muffins with moms, donuts with dad, which was postponed, but they're so highly attended and are ways in which that we can bring families into our schools. And we're always looking for creative ideas to do it. And also tied to the learning experience, it's just an extra benefit. And finally, through community engagement, some things that we've done this year, like the movie night on the lawn out here at the Point, the fall festival, of course, all of the ways in which we engage with community through the ballot issue, the success of 5G lights and the way that it really promoted school pride and tradition and engaged students, not just in athletics, but whether it's technology or all through the district, and to participate in that. Grandparents' Day, Veterans Day, small town Christmas parade, and our bus this year, like all of the ways in which really that we also extend that outreach into the community. We all know that it takes all of us. I wanted to share that update with you as we move into the second semester so that you can see kind of the things that we've done, but also the things that we're still talking about. And this really lays the groundwork for the work that will continue into second semester.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Woodruff. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Questions?
I just had a question about you were talking about tracking behavior. How are you doing that? Are you doing that PBIS or?
Right now, we're all using different systems. And
Okay.
so that's part of the reason for why we need to further the conversation. Like, for example, the middle school uses a software program that works for them and is successful for them. The high school uses more of like Dazzle and our regular progress monitoring tools. The elementary school is finding their way in a documentation system that works for them. So it's really about like what. In fact, we have a cabinet meeting tomorrow morning, which the middle school is going to showcase Educator Handbook, which is a software program that they use. So it's really about like what works best for us and what's the best way to track it, and so that it's also consistent. And then from a compliance standpoint, I mean, we provide reports and information at a state level as well, and it sure would be easy to be able to pull a report and and where it's consistent and it's apples to apples. So again, just streamlining things more and putting systems in place so that we're working smarter.
And is the system that the middle school uses, is it one that could be adapted to elementary and high school?
Possibly, yeah.
I just had a question about that. So I know we've talked about the character strong a couple of times. What was the overall participation of the teachers in that survey? Like, do we feel like we had good overall?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember the
I was
exact
gonna say,
number, but close to
hearing a
100,
number.
close to 100%.
Okay.
Is that what you mean? Like,
Yeah,
how
like
many-
percent, like, you can't do a lot of, 3 surveys.
Oh, no. And we bird dogged it.
Okay.
Yeah, to make sure that we had accurate data. And we'll give it again, in the spring.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Woodruff. All right.
Agenda.
Ready? Good. Okay. All right. Item 3, treasurer's report. A, approve the minutes of the regular board meeting, December 19th, 2024. B, approve the December financial reports. C, approve December month-end advances. D, approve correction of amended appropriations for November 2024. E, approve amended appropriations for December 2024. F, approve adjusted estimated receipts for December 2024. G, accept $200 donation to the Terry Pickering Memorial Scholarship from Gregory and Constance Van Zant. H, approve treasurer's report, items A through F as presented. Ms. Fisher, do you have anything you want to share or?
The correction from November, I had the amount on the wrong line for wrong funds. It was on an ESSER fund, but it actually should have been a safety grant. So I just wanted to get that reapproved so I could send it to the county auditor.
Questions or anything? Entertain a motion?
I'll move.
You were like,
I didn't get to move or second it all.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor.
Yeah.
Mr. Powers.
yeah,
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4, superintendent's update. Back to you, Dr. Woodruff.
Yeah, I feel like I covered it this evening, and
Okay.
the only thing that I really wanted to make sure that I highlighted was the progress on the multipurpose building, but I took some time there during the update. I think I'll just mention again that the prefabricated building, the steel is here, we're waiting on panels. The foundation, even in the cold weather, that's one of the questions, like, is it too cold? It is not too cold based on the mixture that they have. And then the next piece would be like figuring out the connection with the plumbing to the building. How that will work, the intricacies of that, and hopefully being able to do it where we don't have to interrupt student learning. So whether that's on a weekend so that's kind of working through the next piece, the best way. And just again, really pleased with Greene County, who has been working with us. And so, that relationship and that flow seems to be working well. We don't have something, they let us know that they need additional information or they need to see a revision. We do the thing, we send it back, and things are really moving and doing. So just really pleased with the progress and the way in which everyone's working.
is this the same representative that they sent for the bus?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. So that I wanted to make sure that I shared that, because you can visibly see, I mean, there's a big excavator out there and they're working behind it, and you can obviously see the work taking place. But also I just wanted to recognize that January is School Board Recognition Month. And so I have a certificate for each of you, if you would take yours and pass it on. So please know how much I appreciate the opportunity to serve Greeneview local schools, and I thank you for the support as superintendent, as well as your support of students, teachers, and their families. This is a time to say thank you to our school board members and to demonstrate how we work together to provide leadership in our schools. School boards work closely with educators, parents, and community members to create the vision for what we want for our students. It sets the course for an adequate and equitable education program for our students. School board members exemplify local citizen, are you short one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Citizen control. Oh, come on. You as elected individuals establish the policies that provide the framework for our public school. You represent us and take your responsibility seriously. You as school board are responsible and accountable to the public, overseeing regular assessment of the district's students, staff, and programs. Our school is one of more than 700 such boards across the state. These boards enable us to have local control of public schools, meaning that decisions on school programming are made by local elected representatives who understand our community, our unique problems, our values, culture, and circumstances. With the advice and counsel of the educational professionals that you hire, you help provide for an education system that meets the needs of today's and tomorrow's students. You care about our children, and for your dedication, we take this opportunity to show our appreciation during School Board Recognition Month. A special thank you to Suzanne Arthur, almost 11 years, Mr. Scott Powers, 15 years from the school board, Mr. Chris Bailey, 2 years, Mrs. Megan Smith, 3 years, and Ms. Jessie Connor, 1 year. Thank you again for all you do for Greeneview. Concludes my superintendent's update.
Item 5, new business. Approve resolution to employ substitute teachers. Any commentary on this?
Yeah, there's only one new business item this evening, obviously. So what this is that the law requires us to pass a resolution to be able to hire substitute teachers who do not have a post-secondary degree in education. So here are the two examples where this would like typically fall. The state allows teachers to get a temporary sub-license. And so if someone, say, is working on their teaching license but don't have it yet, so they are in the process, then they can get a 1-year temporary license and they are able to sub in our district. Another example would be is if there's a student teacher in our building and he or she is in a classroom and the teacher is out, then that student teacher could also serve as the substitute for that day. It is not a carte blanche, anyone and everyone. We're highly selective to make sure that if we are going to have teachers or, excuse me, staff substituting in our classrooms, that they are appropriately prepared. So the law allows it, but new law requires that the board pass a resolution. We also agree to that.
I have a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Mrs. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yeah,
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 6, personnel. A, approve change in status for Deanna Genesi for Masters plus 30, step 27 to Masters plus 45, step 27, retroactive to the 1/10/2025 pay date. B, approve the following substitute teachers for the 2024-2025 school year, contingent upon proper certification, background check, and completion of required paperwork. Andrew Van Tress, Allison Quarry, Leah Battaglia, Linda Thomas, Amy Powers, Mark Mash, Jenny Smith, Barbara McCown, Heather Lucas, Heather Kasner, Dina Reed, Shelley Bestie, David Bates, John Morrison, Diana Nestor, Lee Armlovich, Lori Young, Carol Mahaffey, Teresa Geringer, James Hoffman, Beth Arthur, Rebecca Goldone, Angie Lowe, Kyoko Moody, Andrea Niehaus, Martha Rector, Todd Lee, Derek Hine, Sue Winkle, Nancy Vogel, and Eva Novel. C, approve the following classified substitutes for the 2024-2025 school year, contingent upon proper certification, background check, and completion of required paperwork. Secretary Heather Lucas, Trevor Cottrell, Stephanie Russo, Sarah Hudson, Tiffany Rittenhouse, Hannah Wolf, Angie Baker, Lacey Womack, and Sharon Keller. Building assistant / bus aide, Leah Battaglia, Lacey Womack, Carol Mahaffey, Heather Lucas, Linda Thomas, Jennifer Gilbert, Julie Dumont, Sarah Hudson, Kyoko Moody, John Morrison, Terry Geringer, Louise Wiedenheft, Anita Dreyer, Gwendolyn McCauley, Sarah Hudson, Angie Baker, Sarah Keller, and Tiffany Rittenhouse. Cooks, Susan McCauley, Nikki Butts, Stephanie Russo, Carol Adams White, Hannah Wolf, Louise Wiedenheft, Joanna Carter, Sarah Hudson, and Anita Dreyer. Custodian, Susan McCauley, Alan Pippin, Steve Morris, Rebecca Vogel, Laura Hanson, Nikki Butts, Joel Armlovich, Gary Cardosi, Billy Joe Travis, Tiffany Rittenhouse, Haley Dye, Carol Adams White, Louise Wiedenheft, and Jeannie Sargent. Bus driver, Jay Brandenburg, Dalton Pate, Paul Thompson, Jennifer Gilbert, and Sam Hook, and mechanic, Steve Morris. Personnel item D, approve personnel items A through C as presented.
I'll move.
I'll second. We're required to board approve substitutes twice a year, which is why we see them on the agenda.
Mr. Powers,
abstain.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 7 for discussion only. Do we have any board member updates this evening?
I do have an update from the Greene County Career Center. So they are currently getting ready to begin negotiations. And the Career Center is hoping to complete 2 lab expansions, which is really exciting. They in this new facility grown to capacity and have to turn kids away every year. And a couple of the programs that are most highly sought out are the welding and the cosmetology programs. And those programs are limited right now to 25 students. And they have probably 3 times that many applied to each one. So they are looking to do an expansion that would expand each program from 25 students to approximately 40 or 50 students. And they would have to add a couple staff members, but they're hoping to have that done by the beginning of the school year. So that next year they can take more students in those programs. There are also some state for elementary students to make career exploration grants available. And I believe maybe Mr. Destin's or Mrs. DeLong sent updates to superintendent about that today. We heard about it last night at the board meeting, but they are offering, Greene County Career Center is offering a lot. They have a lot of money for these grants. They're offering a lot of money, up to $5,000 per staff member. So teachers, staff members, librarians, counselors can apply for these grants. Any grants that will be spent on student-focused resources to support career exploration. Any ideas that the teacher has for doing that within their classroom and each respective community. So the goal is to provide as many resources as possible across the county. The funds are going to be, to support this initiative will be allocated proportionally to districts based on enrollment. And that means some of the funding can flow to each district. And the application process is going to be pretty fast and easy. They're not going to make it too difficult to apply for the grant. They just want to get teachers' ideas. And so they're going to be, the instructions were, I believe, in the email that you received today for how to apply for the grant. And they're going to be expecting those applications to be turned in the 1st or 2nd week of February. So pretty soon. So they should know pretty quickly about who gets the grants. So just an exciting opportunity for our teachers and staff to get money. And $5,000 is a big chunk.
Yeah. Great.
So, yeah.
Do you have any, back to the 2 lab expansions, do you have any idea of where those locations for those programs will be, or will they be there on campus?
They'll be there on campus.
Okay.
So they're going to take the current space and try to expand without doing any building. They're going to try to expand. So like right now they have, it's my understanding that they have classroom space and they have workspace, like for the cosmetology and for the welding. So they're going to expand the workspace. So they'll have to find a different room for the classroom, but they're going to use the space for all workspace so that they can take more students and then try to put the classrooms in other places. That's my understanding.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Arthur. Anyone else? Okay. I'd like to extend an invitation for public participation on non-agenda items. Going once, twice. Okay. Entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll move. A second.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mrs. Connor.
Yeah.
Mr. Powers.
Yeah.
Adjourned at 6:54.